Hey guys and girls, Board now back with you, and on this video I return to Ozark. So this is going to be my review of Season 1, Episode 4. The episode is called Tonight We Improvise. So full spoilers from the start of this review, just to warn you. And I'll say, I think this is the best episode so far out of the four we've had. I think most of the stuff that was going on I enjoyed, or I got something out of. There was some pretty good character moments. And also at the end of the episode, they debut some new characters which are quite effective in how they're presented and the reveal of who they are. And I'll talk about them, but it's basically Peter Mullen, who's a really good British actor. He finally has his debut, because I've seen his name in the credits since the show started, since the first episode, but I was waiting to see who he was going to play, when he would turn up, so it's great. He's a good actor anyway. He's very menacing in like the final scene of the episode. But yeah, one thing I'll start with and say is that it's actually quite a big episode for Jonah, the youngest son of Marty, because up to now he's kind of been this passive sort of character. Not than like the Charlotte, the daughter, has been that much more, but she's obviously been given a bit more. I think Jonah's sort of thing has been then he's very much the younger one, so is maybe a bit more naive to things, and it does have a bond with like Marty especially. So I think for a lot of, whereas I think Charlotte's at the sort of like teen sort of age where she is a bit more rebellious or has a bit more of a voice, and it's sort of like moving and stuff has uprooted her, and she's reacted with a lot more aggression and frustration than Jonah has. But we see what they're building with Jonah in this episode is then there's gonna be like a change in direction for the character, because and this is almost the danger of having this sort of passive type character where you know he does go along with things, but he sort of goes under the radar a bit more than, whereas with Charlotte it's almost like they sort of know what's going on, or they sort of hear her frustration, so maybe there's like this tendency to overlook the one who isn't making so much more noise. So what happens is he's obviously been talking to Buddy, the old man that they live with a lot more, the old man who lives in the basement, and he's clearly very sort of old-fashioned and is a bit, you know, sort of extreme conservative in his ways, and he's been getting like, he gets like Jonah into hunting and things like that in this episode. And we see things slowly come out, and one of the reasons it's the best episode so far, I think, is actually the reveal of what happened in the last episode with like the hunting with the dead animal, and when Wendy thought that it was the other family, the Longmere family, because the reveal, there's two good reveals actually in this episode which do carry some weight. One of them is the reveal that it was actually Jonah who's been shooting the animals. And even more disturbing, it's this sense of he's been killing them, but then actually dragging them from the woods. And obviously, you know, he's caught doing some pretty disgusting things in this episode with them. But he's actually been hunting them and then dragging them, and he's the one who actually left it on outside their house. So that's pretty disturbing stuff. Now, the different reactions are quite interesting, because Wendy actually is a bit more flip about it. She's a bit more, well, it's just a phase, he'll get over it, that thing. It's actually Marty who's more concerned, which was quite interesting. But I think, yeah, you can see how maybe there's going to be a shift in Jonah, and maybe he's going to be the one who goes down maybe a more disturbing path. I think I can definitely see that happening. So that could be quite interesting to watch unfold. And another good reveal in this episode is to do with Wendy's past. Actually, it's sort of revealed that her brother, he shot up a school basically. Then that's something she had to deal with in her youth when she was much younger, and she has this dark secret in the past, and I guess that sort of puts a bit more weight to her character and a bit more of a background, and there's sort of a worry that Jonah could sort of go that way. But there's one of these like really awkward dinner table scenes, which is really well done. Well, it's actually at breakfast sort of thing, and it's like Charlotte just being like rebellious and stuff, this is where this episode is nicely played, because there's an earlier scene where Wendy and Marty are like debating the Jonah issue, and Charlotte is just up on like the balcony and she can hear them, which they don't know she's there. So the next morning at breakfast, she actually randomly drops the concern about Jonah and could he end up, which they don't exactly say, but they're sort of dancing around it and saying that then he could end up like Wendy's brother. And the way Charlotte puts it is very sort of blunt and doesn't exactly represent what they were saying, but they were obviously voicing their concerns and discussing it. So this sets Jonah off, and he's really mad at them and just sort of storms out. And again, it puts him further on this sort of path of where there could be a character change in him. And it's definitely going to be something, I think, which this series will explore. Obviously, the effects this stuff and like some of the choices of, well, Wendy, but particularly Marty, will have on the family and the children at a very important stage in their lives. So you can sort of see them taking Jonah down quite a dark, sort of disturbing path. Another thing in the episode is that Marty is starting to get more pressure from Dale to make the money back. Like the clock is ticking, so he actually has this idea to revisit like the strip club idea, because the Blue Cat isn't enough on its own, and so he gets Ruth to like audition to be a stripper, and it's because he knows that there's like a safe in there to sort of like go undercover and try and get info. And obviously we know about Ruth's intentions from the last episode, so she actually goes for a job interview, and it's another well played scene. Again, like Julia Garner is really great in the scene, but it's also a very sleazy kind of uncomfortable scene, because the club owner, or the one that runs it, is being very sort of sleazy and slimy, and he kind of wants a blowjob from her as part of like the interview process, and it's a good sort of turn in the scene, because it looks like she's going to give him one, but you probably sense something's coming, and she ends up basically like, I think it's, whacking him in the balls, basically, which is a great payoff. And she leaves with the line, "You're right, some people just aren't made to be strippers or dancers." So that's a really good like exit line. And it's definitely one of those things where you're right there with her. It's like, yeah, this guy is a total sleazebag. You know, she's only like 19 or whatever, so... And he was being a total dick, so no pun intended. So that's a good payoff. But she sort of gets inside and sees the safe and what have you. And so they set up a thing later where Ruth comes up with this plan, and the plan is that she gets a bunch of like underage kids off the street, and she sort of pays them, or like gives them something for them to like go into the club and cause a disturbance. And it's sort of a risky strategy, and you're not quite sure if it's going to work. But Marty's outside, and he's like getting all sweaty and panicking because it was Ruth's idea as well. So I think it's showing you how she's taking more power and coming up with stuff herself, because it was her plan, I think, not Marty's. And he's sort of sweating. So again, there's some good drama to this scene. But the idea is that the cops will get notified, and they all come and arrest people, or arrest like the club owner, Bobby his name is. And that causes a whole thing, which gives her time to get into the office and to get the safe. But the catch is that the safe is like all locked up, and she doesn't know how to undo it, so or unlock it. So she's having like conversations with Marty on the outside, and I like touches like this too, because it does show them, as smart as Ruth is, as as talented and that as she may be, obviously there's limitations, and she's only a young girl, so it sort of makes sense that she wouldn't think of everything, and that they would still come up against problems. So in the end, it's a funny scene, like the way it ends, because Marty, they just tie something to the safe, and Marty has to like literally drag it out, like, because it's tied to the end of the car. So it's pretty funny to see that. And at first they think they haven't got anything, that it's a dead loss, like there's no money in the safe, but, well, there isn't any money, but then they come across like the deeds to the club. And what happens later is Marty goes to visit Bobby in prison, and he blackmails him into giving him the club, because he's got the deed there, and it's proof then Bobby didn't get the club. Didn't get the club by legal means. It's not, and it's not his. It's not like legally his on a sort of a contract. So Marty has that leverage against him, and he like blackmails him and makes him an offer, and he ends up getting the club. And this is what leads to the end of the episode, with the introduction of this character Jacob, played by Peter Mullen, who, again, as I said, he's good at playing like intimidating but softly spoken sort of characters. And you've also got his wife Darlene, but and you sort of get where the scene is going, because Bobby comes to see them, and he's got the news about the club, and we don't find out that much, but we just obviously get the impression that they have a vested interest in the town and in that business, and that like the Peter Mullen Jacob character must be like the guy who like is the owner sort of thing, and so he's obviously mad that they've lost the club to Marty, and you can sense that the scene's going to end up with them killing Bobby, which they do, but it's done in quite a roundabout, creative sort of way. They don't just shoot him, and you see where they probably have a plan in the type of death it is, because his wife Darlene comes out on the porch and has a drink, like, which she's like pretending to serve to Bobby, and she ends up injecting him out of nowhere with, I think it must be drugs, so they're probably going to make it look like an overdose, and that's how that's the end, that's how they kill him. So it was a good debut for Mullen and Darlene, their characters. It was a nice sort of payoff and way to introduce them. So good debut for them. Also, there's a little bit on Rob, the FBI guy. Sorry, Roy, who's undercover in the town, and he's obviously, well, he's made a contact in this episode with one of the brothers, Ruth's uncle, in fact. So we've already seen, actually, Carson, the name is, in the previous episode, and he's into men, and there's, he sort of has a guy in his hotel room, and I'm not sure exactly where this is leading, but he does strike up an interest in Carson, and there seems to be a bit of a flirtation there. And Carson's sort of in denial, I think he's being all kind of stereotypical, like macho, but he does make the contact, and he says, I want you to teach me how to fish, and that's kind of how he makes the contact and broaches that. Now, obviously, he's got some sort of plan to do with catching Marty, finding out what's going on with him, but that's the way he makes the contact. So only a little bit of that in this episode. So we'll have to see where it goes. I'm not quite sure yet where it's going to go. So, but I did think this was the best of the 4 episodes so far, because the standard so far has been a little up and down. But I enjoyed this one. There was some good storytelling beats, some good payoffs. So that's Ozark episode 4, and like and subscribe as always. You can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/boardnow, and I'll be back with more Ozark soon. Thanks guys, see you later.